won't be persecuted. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, has been to the largely Hazara province of Bamiyan to find out more.
Gaping holes where the 6th century Bamiyan Buddhas once stood. Destroyed in 2001 on the orders of a Taliban committee that included Afghanistan's new head of government, Mullah Hassan Akhund. They say it'll be different this time, and they won't persecute the Hazara people of Bamiyan, whom they revile for being Shia, not Sunni Muslims. But look what they've done to the statue of Abdul Ali Mazari, a champion of Hazara rights, whom they murdered in 1995. We met 2 young women who've worked for foreign organisations in Bamiyan. Like most here, they're liberal, even liberated. And they panicked when the Taliban stormed into town last month. We're hiding their identities to protect them.
و ما همراه کفشای کوچیدار رفته بودیم، آلی ترسیده بودیم که اگر احیانا طالب بیاید ما چه قسم فرار بکنیم. بعدش گفتیم باشه یگان دکان چیزا پیدا شود که ما حداقل بتونیم یک کرمیج بگیریم که ممیرای گریز را پیدا بکنیم. بعد اونجا رفتیم یک کرمیج گرفتیم، مالی میبینیم که موترش پیدا نمیشه، چیکار بکنیم خدا؟
Both of them hid in farming villages with their families, but they returned to see if they could somehow carry on working, one as a journalist, the other a women's rights activist.
ما خود زیاد کوشش میکنم که زنها مثلا 20 ساله که زنها زحمت کشیدن، 20 ساله که اینا تلاش کردن، نمیخوایم که تلاش 20 ساله از اینا یک بارگی زیر خاک بره.
We drove to the bazaar, which would previously have been full of tourists and foreign NGO workers, but is now patrolled by the Taliban. Very few Hazaras joined the Taliban, but we happened to come across the most notorious, Maulawi Mahdi, imprisoned for extortion and abduction, who signed up when he came out of jail, was right there.
کشورهای بیگانه وقتی که مثلا دیگه به هر بهانه‌ای به خاک ما بالای مردم ما اگر یک بلیس از خاک ما را تجاوز میکنه و ایشون به زور میخواد داخلشان شوه، بعد یه حکم دینی ما بالای ما فرض میکنه دینی ما بالای از ما که ما به خاطر دفاع از زمین یک بلیس اراضی خود، خاک خود و مردم ملت خود مقصد دیگه دفاع بکنیم.
The fighters, he said, were treating the people so well that the Taliban has no enemies in Bamiyan. The Taliban are clearly trying to show their softer side in Bamiyan, both to us and to the population. But people here have terrible memories of what happened last time, how they were persecuted for being Hazaras, for being Shia, not Sunni Muslims. So many have fled, and others are just terrified. They don't trust the Taliban. Mahdi's deputy, another Hazara, was also on message. Women don't have to cover their faces, he said, just their hair.
و برای مجاهدین هم از طرف بزرگین امارت اسلامی دستور داده شده که هیچ گونه بنانات مردم به فرهنگ مردم، خصوصا مردم تشیعی که مردم از ماست، به ازا ما اطمینان میدیم که هیچ گونه تشویشی نداشته باشند.
But people whispered something different when the Talibs weren't listening. Everyone's buying cloth to make traditional clothes, fearing the Taliban won't tolerate people wearing jeans and shirts. One man had a story of a relative beaten savagely for parking his car in the wrong place. Another said he knew of villagers being forced to leave their homes. The young women we met came from poor rural backgrounds and feel they have to speak out.
آمدیم در اینجا تا صدای بانوی باشیم که اونا اصلا دسترسی به اینجا نداره، حتی صلاحیتی رو نداره که تا بازار رو بره بدون محرم یا بدون چادری. ما دیگه حالی خطر قبول کردیم، برای ما هیچ فرق نمیکنه.
آسیب پذیرترین شخصی که ما در جامعه هستیم طبقه اوناس هستیم، بخصوص ما کسی که ما مدتی چند سال میشه که مثلا ما در بخش حقوق زن، فعالین حقوق زن در بخش خبرنگاری که صدای مردم را ما برای مردم انتقال میدم کار میکنم، ولی ما فعلا احساسی رو میکنم که ما شاید امروز باشیم یا که مثلا فردا باشیم پس فردا نباشیم.
Afghans live in the shadow of war. In Bamiyan, Soviet tanks from the 1980s sprout like indestructible mushrooms. But people are not indestructible, and nor are the gains the Hazaras and women have made in the last 2 decades. In Bamiyan, the Taliban are smiling, but menace and dread lie just beneath the surface. It's exactly 1 month today since the Taliban seized Kabul. The previous government just collapsed and they walked in. Now, what's happened in that time? Well, pretty much drift and chaos, and there's crisis mounting on crisis. So you saw those 2 young women. Yes, they're very brave for speaking out on women's rights, on human rights, but also they are the main breadwinners for their families and they don't have jobs anymore. Now that is multiplied millions of times across Afghanistan. This government, the Taliban, well, as you saw, they're pretty good at hanging out on street corners, acting like the police and sometimes acting like thugs. But running a country, that is something completely different. And the economy in the last month, that it has just collapsed. People have no income. Life is getting harder and harder. We talk about human rights, and that's really significant. But survival is also really significant. The last month has been a disaster for large numbers of Afghans. And if we look to the next month and the month after that, I see no sign that these mullahs are learning how to govern. And Afghans are looking to the future with fear for their rights and terror for their survival.
Lindsay, thanks very much. Now, Shamima Begum,